screens. I think Ms. Bryson and Mr. Alford both indicated they're okay if they don't have a visual in front of them, if they've got any paper in front of them. But we do have the report, which would be nice. You can look at it. I can't see it. Are we good? Or you want to? So thank you for your patience. I'll just be a moment or two. You're good? All right. Well, welcome to the Community Service and Public Safety Committee meeting. Today is Monday, May 20th. And if you will, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And do we have an adoption of the agenda?
Madam Chair, I move to amend the agenda to add the discussion of the IPM or Integrated Pest Management Policy because that matter was continued to today.
Okay, is there a second?
Did I ask the town attorney how we deal with the procedural question when clearly the matter was continued on a vote of 3-1 from our last meeting on April 8th to today, May 20th, specifically to today's 30th.
Okay, so two things. I see Curtis is ready to jump in, and I thank him. I just also want to mention that we have not yet approved the minutes from last meeting, so there were a few comments that were made at the conclusion of that agenda item. But without a second, I don't want to go into discussion, and I'll turn it over to our town attorney.
And the video was available, and I watched it again last night.
Well, at this point, there's been no second to the motion to amend the agenda. I would also note, and I think all committee members are aware, there's a discussion of the issue raised by Ms. Bryson's motion set for before council tomorrow with regard to the second question rather, is posed by Ms. Bryson. Based on what I have seen, there was indeed, as she says, a motion to move this to the next meeting. However, the mayor has chosen not to place that on the agenda, and while under Robert's rules there is, I think your motion would have been treated as a motion to postpone to a time certain. Robert's rules form a useful guide for council, but council is not bound by Robert's rules. And so I think that the mayor's decision to not put this on the agenda today governs in that condition, and the matter will be postponed to a time when it is on the agenda.
Mr. Town Attorney, it specifically says, if you listen to the video as well, it specifically says to the May 20th meeting, so it was a date certain.
Well, that's what I said. I agree that that's what the motion was. But the mayor has not put it on the agenda today. I don't know that that's fatal to anything, and certainly the committee can take it up at such time as it appears on the agenda.
So if the committee takes action to continue a matter, then that doesn't matter.
That's not what I said.
Well, I'm at a loss to understand the ruling because when the committee takes action to continue the matter to a time certain, a day and time certain, then under what authority can the mayor overrule that action of a committee?
Well, the mayor has the power to set the agendas in 2330 of the municipal code.
For the town council meetings, but it
Well,
doesn't-
the interpretation, though, has been that this is a town council matter, and the mayor has been tasked with and has approved the agendas for the committee meetings, certainly for the last two mayors. Can't really speak to the ones before that.
So for what purpose does the committee exist and take action then?
Well, I think the committees exist to review matters and make recommendations to council.
And does a committee take action in its recommendation?
It doesn't take final action, it makes a recommendation to the full council.
But it does take an action.
Yes?
And is a continuance an action?
Yes, a continuance is an action.
Okay.
But again, you have a number of overlapping things here, including the mayor's ability to set the agenda, and the mayor has set the agenda for this meeting, and it does not include that item. Again, I don't know that I think it's fatal if it moves to a subsequent meeting when it is on the agenda.
Okay, well, I take exception to the ruling.
Thank you, Curtis. I do want to say this. It's appropriate to move forward when we have something new to move forward, and there's still work being done to make sure that the next time the matter is brought to us as a council, that we have a picture that more represents the picture that the citizens of the town and you, Patsy, have asked us to consider. And so once that is all complete and rounded out, I believe you'll see something ready for an agenda. In the meantime, as I said during the last meeting, we had a proposal before us that I think staff felt they could accomplish and bring as a starting point. And I was certainly ready to take that recommendation from staff and move that forward so something could begin. But that was not the desire of this committee. They wanted to hold until more could be approached. So this is where we land for today. We also have number 3, which is the approval of the minutes. We have the regular meeting minutes of March 18th, 2024.
Ms. Becker, I'm sorry. There's been no vote on approval of the agenda.
That is correct. There has not been. We need to have a motion to adopt this agenda before us.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor? All opposed?
I vote no.
2-1. Okay. And now moving on, we have the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting March 18th, 2024, and the regular meeting of April 8th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve those two sets of agenda minutes?
Madam Chair, I'd ask that the minutes of April 8, 2024 be postponed to another time. Both Mr. Alfred and I have noticed some errors in those minutes, and they need to be revised. We'll share with the town clerk those corrections.
Okay, thank you. We'll also share that with the entire committee so that we can have the benefit of your observations.
Absolutely.
And so let's vote on them separately. Approval of the minutes for March 18th, 2024.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Approval of the minutes. So we're going to postponement of the minutes of April 8th, 2024. All in favor? Okay. 4-0 and 4-0. Zendaya, thank you for your patience. Are there any citizens who wish to speak at this time?
Yes, ma'am. We have Pamela Martin Ovens.
I don't know, probably that one.
I'm Pam Martin Ovens, and I'm concerned that our highly paid expert town staff are so busy that they cannot keep public safety as a top priority. Brian McElwee consults town business partners, such as Ryan McPhee of Brightview, who is actually a town contractor. Like the proverbial fox watching the hen house, and Clemson that is supported by many pesticide chemical companies. Also, landscapers not in hazmat suits were found to be spraying Ranger Pro, a most deadly form of glyphosates, 3,450 times more dangerous than Roundup, all over our beloved Veterans Park. I guess they were thinking that these visitors are already old. Certainly, other sources concerned about public safety should be researched by staff. On only my first foray into Nextdoor, this subject aroused over 200 people's interest, most for an IPM and a few against. Certainly the beginning of a hot topic. Please continue to keep those of us who are really love this island in the loop and consider our contributions for solving this vital subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Anyone else? Anyone else sign up, Cynthia?
No, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. And moving on to unfinished business, we have a presentation by the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office. It's the quarterly crime report, and Major Purdy's here to give that report to us all. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, thank you. Since we didn't meet for the fourth quarter, I incorporated that into the first quarter. Give you a little background of some of the numbers that I have here before you.
Thank you for your patience with us. It's been a rough scheduling of trying to fit everything in, so we appreciate you being here today.
You can move the mic a little closer. Thank you.
All right. Okay, there we go. All right, again, this is the first quarter of 2024, and I incorporated 2023 numbers as well to give you guys an idea of how we did last year. Starting with the first quarter of this year, we've had one murder up on Fish Hole Road that we're successful in putting together. The aggravated assaults, they're down, which is a good thing, and the numbers are difficult to understand sometimes, but 6 of these 10 were family or domestic related. Robberies, we had 3 robberies, two were strong-armed and 1 was armed, and then we get over to the rapes. Looking at the sexual assaults, 3 of them were victims, no suspect. They knew each other. 1 of them was someone that just met the other person recently. This next slide is just we'll fill this in throughout the year. I've got a couple of these I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. And this is just some of the crime scene unit ladies and gentlemen that are working this year. They were out doing some training. Thought it was interesting to see what some of the folks that work here on the island. 3 of the members of the sheriff's office that work on the crime scene unit work the island predominantly. This goes back until, this is last year's numbers compared to this year's. It's painting you a better picture. Last year we had a murder early on in August, and then, that was 22, 23. We had gone the whole year until the 2nd of November. We had our first murder, and then we had the second one a week later. Going to the aggravated assaults, they were up a little bit in 23. Then your robberies were down a little bit in 23, and the sexual batteries were down as well. This is just a glimpse of the quarter for the year dealing with your property crimes. got burglaries, larcenies, and auto theft. The burglaries, there's 10 burglaries, and kind of breaking those down a little bit, 5 were residential, 2 were businesses, and 1 was a domestic-related burglary. Out of the residential burglaries, 2 people left their garage doors open, 1's house was unsecured. So as I'm before you, we continue to ask people to lock their cars, take their garage door remotes in their house, don't leave their keys in their cars, but the same thing with their houses. Lock your doors and close your garage door when you're not using your garage. It's easy access for people, and they tend to take advantage of these crimes of opportunity. The larcenies are down, as you can see, and the auto thefts are the same. Down with auto thefts, we still have the same problem. Keys in the ignition, keys in the golf carts. 5 of these were vehicles, 3 were golf carts, and 1 was an electric scooter. This is some more of our crime scene guys out there securing a scene. This is post-scene processing where they're actually looking for additional evidence that may have been left behind. That's the same, basically the same slide as the other one, but it goes by quarter. We'll fill that in again throughout the year. This is the 23 compared to 22. The burglaries were down a good fair amount. The larcenies were down, as well as the auto thefts. So I think we felt pretty good about that. All those numbers decreased in the year of 2023, and hopefully we can pick up that pace and decrease them a little more for 24. Collisions. This has always been a hot topic. I think Ms. Bryson asked last time, what were the main causes of these collisions? They're very difficult to find out, but I got some information from the folks up at the State Department of Transportation. The biggest problem, the biggest cause of these wrecks around here is failure to yield the right-of-way. Second cause is distracted driving. I'm sure that we all see that as we drive day in and day out. And then the third one was too fast for conditions, which was speed. The collisions on this quarter, they're up. Looks like we had 262 collisions in this quarter. Last year, first quarter, we had 231. We've had 2 fatalities already this year. One was a single car vehicle versus a tree on a Marston and Spanish Wells. The other one was a vehicle versus a pedestrian, which was out by the traffic circle on Squire Pope. Again, this is the same format that we use. We'll fill this in throughout the year. Those are basically the same numbers. And going down to the vehicle collisions in 22 versus 23, looking at the numbers and adding them up, our collisions were down throughout the year. The collisions for 23 were 1,099. The collisions for 22 were 1,153. And as you look at the categories across the board, across the bottom, they look like we did a little bit better there. This is just some traffic enforcement, some patrols, doing some investigations out there on the road. I think I was asked last time I was up here, what are we doing to battle the traffic collisions and the issues that we deal with day to day? We've been putting guys out there to do extra details to run traffic. On their days off, they come in and they run traffic details, whether it be speeding, passing on a solid line, distracted driving, what have you. The first quarter, we were a little busier than we were last year. We had 509 tickets on 23, and 24 we've had 804 so far. On the warnings, we had 538 for the first quarter of 23, and for 24 we had 744. I think that has something to do with, I think there's more traffic on the roads. That's my opinion. I drive these roads in the morning and in the evening, and it seems like those 2 periods of times is when there's the most traffic out there, and personally for me it just seems like there's more. That's just my opinion.
What is that time frame you're referring to?
In the mornings, the morning rush hour and the evening rush hour, afternoon rush hour, it just, to me, I usually track my days coming on to Hilton Head, and I could pick the days where there's less traffic it just doesn't seem that way anymore. Either the window's moving or there's more people, more vehicles.
Thank you.
In 22 to 23, the tickets, we wrote more tickets in 23 than 22. We wrote less warnings in 23 than 22.
I'm sorry, you said, I'm trying to look at three screens here, one of which is green, and I'm looking for the weather report. But I believe you said that there were more tickets and less warnings, comparing 2022 to 2023. Was that due to the seriousness of the offense, or was that because there was more enforcement, or because some folks had a first warning and then they got a ticket?
I'd like to see it because we're out there with law enforcement as far as these tickets and these numbers. But I know some of these officers that are on the road, they've had some trainees with them, which is going to reduce the numbers there a little bit. The different focus, different times, I don't have an exact answer for you on that.
Okay, thank you.
You know what I think would be interesting? I was waiting until the end, but would you prefer we wait till the end? To ask you questions, or just along the way? Okay, we'll wait till the end then.
Calls for service, the first quarter of this year, the calls for services were up quite a bit. The reports are up quite a bit. The arrests are down a little bit, and the self-reporting accident forms are down a little bit. This is the year compared to the year from 22 to 23 for quarters. Overall, the calls for service were down a little bit in 23 versus 22. Our reports were up. Our incident reports, written incident reports, our arrests were up a little bit, and our traffic accident reportable forms were down a little bit. We're getting here to the beach season, so we will be obviously out on the beach again this year, dealing with the Marine Patrol and all the people coming here to Hilton Head Island. Goal is safety. I think we all have the same goal here. Looking at your town ordinances violations for the last quarter, it's except for spring break, they're pretty down well. We had some issues at the beginning of spring breaks coming along where we brought some extra people out on the road, out in the areas where we're having some major issues with people not following the law and doing the right things. So we had some extra added troops out there, which really curved that and curved it quickly. We brought them out there in uniform, out of uniform, hitting the beaches areas, hitting the popular areas, and it slowed it down for a good little while. So we're pleased with that. St. Patrick's Day went well. We had obviously we had a great showing out there. These are some of the gentlemen that were running it. We had Lieutenant Calendine on the right, Corporal Lady, the emergency operations captain Bobby Tootin, and then on the left you have Sergeant Toomey. He's one of our canine handlers. Bobby runs the EOC. It worked. It was very well. I think it was a good success for all of us. Some of the events that we've done in the first quarter this year, in the center picture, you've got 5 of our deputies in the deputies room. They received some cards from St. Francis. Picture on the left, we've got Master Sergeant Danny Allen. He's in there teaching some folks, talking to some folks at the Boys and Girls Club. And then on the right, we've got one of our new school resource officers. He's at Hilton Head L, Deputy Sheriff Ron. So he's one of the 4 SROs that we have on the island these days. And just a reminder to you guys and to everybody else, this is Master Sergeant Danny Allen. He runs our Citizens Police Academy. It's a great experience. I don't know of anybody that didn't go through the Citizens Police Academy that didn't like it. It's a great opportunity to learn, to see what the Sheriff's Office has to offer. And it's a great educational piece. Ms. Becker?
Thank you. It's a great report, and sorry for the interruptions. Members of our committee, Do you have any questions? Betsy?
Just a couple of comments and then a question or two. First of all, thank you for responding to the questions I'd raised previously. I appreciate that. I think it's very helpful to know about the cause of collisions, to see if there's anything we should be doing here. And thank you for the extra patrols on the beaches, and we're glad to see those results. Also wanted to thank you for the deputies who assisted with the ride of silence this past Wednesday. Mr. Alfred and I both rode our bikes during the ride of silence, and trying to control the traffic on 278 while a bunch of bicyclists are on the same road is difficult, but certainly felt a lot better having the deputies there, so thank you for doing that. Also, I noticed you had some slides about enforcement of town ordinances, and I'm glad that the sheriff is enforcing our ordinances. And as I understand it, those are the ordinances that the town adopts for which there are criminal penalties. So am I accurate to say that part of the duty of the sheriff's office is to enforce our local town ordinances?
That could be one of our responsibilities, but we give that to the town for the most part to handle those. If we need to take action when they're not available, we certainly do. And if there's a state law violation or something of that nature, we'd address that way as well.
So if the town, so for these that you've listed, fleeing to evade ticket, alcohol on the beach, alcohol in public, negligent, looks like some sort of negligent boat riding, I guess, discharge firearm, loitering, disturbing the peace, vehicle on the beach. So the town has asked the sheriff to enforce those town ordinances, and you do that, is that correct?
That is.
Okay. So if we ask for enforcement of our ordinances, then it will be the duty of the sheriff to do that.
We do those along with Director Bromage and what those folks are responsible for doing what they do. We work together in tandem with them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. Alex?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. How we
Good
doing?
morning, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I appreciate the slides around community engagement. I'm always beating that drum, obviously. I'm glad to see that you guys are out interfacing with the youngsters. That's a big deal. I got a little list here, so I'll go one at a time.
Okay.
So that you can respond. The first one, we talked about increased presence at the beaches, I guess during the last little spring break session.
That's correct.
I'm curious to know, as we are moving into Memorial Day and move into the height of our season, are there plans to increase the visibility during those times as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good. I think that's a good thing and a good deter for mischievous behavior. I've been asked to ask this question about funeral processionals. Obviously, you just mentioned that you've seen an increase in traffic, and it's no more peaks and valleys. It's just sort of a thing. Is there some type of formal process for funeral homes as far as communication with the sheriff's office to help with funeral processions?
Typically, they'll call us direct. The last funeral that we dealt with, I was in direct contact with Ed Allen, who was helping with that. We organize it that way. We'll escort you if we have people available. If people are tied up on calls that take priority, then they'll do that. We do our best not to block intersections, but in certain cases, when there's a lot of traffic and a lot going on, and we have the person to do it, we'll help out with that. But the funeral director, the guy that's running, the person that's running the funeral will reach out to one of our folks on Hilton Head to help them with that, or Bluffton or Beaufort, wherever part of the county they are.
Okay, all right. Just know that depending on the time of the funeral, Hilton Head seems to be get an uptick in traffic moving around the island, particularly around lunchtime, and if folks are having funerals at that time, obviously that's a challenge. I just hate to have an accident happen while one is having a funeral, so I'm glad that y'all have that means of communication there. Just another stat that I asked it to include moving forward. Obviously, we've been having a lot of discussions around housing on Hilton Head. I know that we are offering a stipend for officers to live on Hilton Head, but if you can help us understand how many officers that are actually working on Hilton Head and living on Hilton Head in the future? That'd be a good statistic to have before us.
I can find the amount of people that are actually living on Hilton Head that work over here, but as far as what time of day it is, when it's that, the amount of people over here could range.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not just interested in that, just want to know how many are actually living on the island.
Sure, I'll let you know.
Yep. And the last one, as we see the statistics, there's a decrease in the areas that we're looking at. But I for one get a lot of calls about just shootings, not necessarily shootings where individuals have been struck, but just shootings, okay?
Sure.
And when you start to have an increase in shootings in an area, and then there is an actual incident, there's always a correlation that the two may be related. And I understand in most cases they are not, okay? And you all understand that very well, but the average citizen does not. It's just, I heard shootings for the last 2 weeks, there's an incident, they must be related. So my question is, how can we being town and sheriff's office, do a better job communicating with residents that are experiencing these shooting activities that are not necessarily resulting to an incident? I think there's a sort of a lack of confidence or comfort that when there is a shooting, that there is something happening when the shooting occurs. And when I say happening, something that the sheriff's office is doing in response. So how do we do a better job with communicating that?
We deal with calls for service day in and day out with shootings, and oftentimes we get there and it's not. Of course, sometimes we get there and we have property damage, or we've got a victim there that's been actually injured. The best thing I could tell you is that they've got to report it. People have to report it and give us the best information we can get. If you're talking about someone that's target shooting or doing something where they're allowed to do it, we'll respond to the call, but we're not going to put something out because there's nothing illegal about it, per se. I think, but the best thing that we need to do is just communicate that information to us. If you know someone's in the area, in a vehicle that's shooting or involved in a shooting, a vehicle description, if a person's in the area, if they're on a bicycle, a description of that person, description of the bicycle, all the information we get on the front end, the better off we are. So when these guys, these men and women are coming from different areas, they have a better idea of what to look for. Oftentimes we get a shooting and we'll be on the way there and we won't have any detailed information, and we could be driving right by the individual responsible leaving. But I think communication is the key. Communication from the people in the neighborhoods, communications from everybody involved. And if people in the community have information about a shooting, there's Crime Stoppers out there. They can call us, they can leave a tip, they can do it anonymously. We've got all sorts of resources on our website that could help direct people to pass that information on. So again, the communication.
So moving forward, can you include in your call for services report just where those shootings are happening so we have a better idea as well?
I'll see what I can do, sir.
Thank you. All right, that's all I have. Thanks again.
Thank you, Alex. Steve?
Thank you, Major Purdy, for your presentation of statistics. Following up a little bit on Councilmember Brown's question, would I be correct in assuming that you plot these various serious crimes geographically and by time of day and night or so forth?
We do. We have an intel section that does that. They do it on the island. They do it in different areas throughout the county, and pass that information to the guys, the men and women that are out there in uniform, day in and day out. When they're not on a calls for service, we prefer that they spend time in those areas. Between those areas, and then we've got the car break-ins, those areas as well. Any criminal activity that we've identified, we try to get our troops over there to help suppress it, if you will.
Do you have adequate resources and personnel and so forth to be able to move your officers around that reflect the geography and time of day that various serious crimes are occurring?
For the most part, we do. I would say yes. But if there's a major incident somewhere, all those people typically shift. So, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for a great report. And before I start on my questions, I just wanted to also mention the Citizens Police Academy. We've had friends who have gone through, I have not found the time, but I'm looking forward to doing it. But we have people that we know who have gone through the academy and cannot say enough positive about what they took away. They had no idea, as are some of the comments about everything that goes into what you guys are doing. And so thank you for having that out there. And I do encourage others to find time to do it and have that same positive experience. A number of the questions that I have here have been asked. I think we should be able to find out how many of the Sheriff's Department deputies are working on the island from our finance department, because it's paid for. Those stipends are paid for through the town. So that was one issue that I wanted to bring up. Some of the statistics I might find interesting, like I know that we used to get, with regard to, similar to what Mr. Alfred was mentioning, plots of where activity was happening. So like on the traffic incidents, that we would know, is it on Pope Avenue? Are we talking about South Forest Beach or, Matthews Drive? So that we had more of a scatter and would be able to understand where the.
Are you referring to the heat maps I did in the past? Okay.
And when we had the quarterly reports, it was also included in there so that we would be able to see where those areas where the accidents were happening. But also, I thought it was interesting when you were mentioning the tickets and the warnings. I would be very interested in knowing what's behind those numbers. For tickets regarding speed, I'd like to know if it's 5 miles over the speed limit, or, as I think most of us witnessed, we're trying to stay at 45 or below, those who are passing us at 55 and 65, down to 78, for instance, or other roads where it's inappropriate. So how much over the speed limit are they getting tickets for? Like, what is the issue in terms of speeding? Does that make sense?
Are you asking what's the magic number?
No,
That's
not so
what
much
we're
what's
writing
the
them for?
magic number, just what goes into that statistic with, behind the tickets. Is it tickets for, in the speeding category, people going 5 miles over the speed limit, or do we have a bigger problem with people going at 65 and above? Where are you seeing the speeding going on? What's the majority of those?
I think that would take quite a bit of research to figure out where the speeds are, if they're 5, 10, 15 miles an hour over.
Just curious. There's lots of numbers that go into what we see, and kind of interested in the numbers behind the number. But
I'll see if I can find something out for you.
And I guess that it would be all of the categories, right? So we know there's tickets, but are they what the tickets are for? And so that we have an idea of what the biggest problems on our roads really, are. Is it running red lights? We see a lot of that. Is it speeding above 45? We see a lot of that. Is it zigzagging through traffic? We see certainly plenty of that as well. The other thing that I thought was interesting when I was looking at the 22, 23, and 24 comparisons is that 22 seemed to be a higher number, and that we seem to be having some decrease. And I wonder whether or not some of that is in relationship to the number of people who were here because of COVID. And so we had additional activities, and that it's tapering off a little bit, and what that might tell us. So I know my questions are a little bit more tedious, because it's really the numbers behind the numbers that tell the story that I'm interested most of the time in. The other thing that we hear is with regard to the shots, right? That has been brought up here. What is it that is illegal to be firing a firearm on the island? You mentioned target practice. What's legal to be shooting your gun around, because inevitably, whether it's unintentional shooting, someone's going to get in the crosshairs of that bullet flying around. And we do get lots of reports of, there's a lot of gunfire over in this area, what was going on, they can't find anything, reported, et cetera. And just, you get a lot of those questions, I know, I do.
Shots fired call we get routinely. I say routinely, we get often. And as long as the people are out there doing it in a safe manner and not in violation of the law, they can shoot. If they're out shooting skeet, they're zeroing a rifle and they're doing some pistol training or whatever, as long as they're doing it in a safe manner, then they're allowed to do it. If, as long as it's not on county property, town property, if it's on private property and they have the authority to be there, authorization to be there, then as long as they're not doing it illegally, they're not a felon or they're not consuming alcohol or something like that and doing it. We just go out there and make sure that they're doing it in a safe manner.
Do you have a percentage or an idea of the number of calls that you get that actually have something there to investigate, even if it's minor, door was left open or the keys were in the car, versus those that you get a call for service and nothing ever comes of it? It's just we checked on it and there's no report written.
I'm not sure what you're asking. So for the shots fired call, we wouldn't
Just
write
in
a
general, somebody has something that happens, but a report doesn't get written, so it never gets into the statistics or.
Well, some of the numbers up on there, the cost for service were, I think, 14,000, and then the reports were like 900. Those were the things where there was something that found that could have been illegal or needed to be documented, and the other ones were either unfound or there was nothing illegal going on.
All right, and I would like to also reiterate what you said, which I find incredibly important. Close your garage doors, take your keys and your guns out of your cars, and don't apparently leave your key fob by the front door, because there's some new scam where folks can come close enough to your house and they can pick up the fob electronically and reproduce it. So take all precautions in terms of keeping yourself safe so that we don't have the issues on the island that we're concerned about. And there does seem to be a heightened awareness and anxiety about issues happening on the island. That's why I was asking the questions in terms of how many of them become something versus, things that we all hear about and sense that never make it to the statistics. So, thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we appreciate your time, and we look forward to when you join us again.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, maybe I should ask the question if there's any public comment or questions. I think I see at least one. Come up and.
Do you think you could end right turn on red? Where I live, and it's almost everyone, because it's going down Point Comfort Road. And so if you're coming off of Palmetto Bay Road, turning left, and you wait for the green arrow to turn left, and then there's a nut job turning right. They're not watching, they're not aware. And I noticed some parts on the island, you've stopped using it.
We don't dictate those.
Oh, who does?
Signs. DOT would be the ones that handle that.
So that's part of the discussions as we're
It's
working.
interesting, isn't it?
But that's through all of our discussions on the corridor and the planning for proper sequencing of turns and lights, et cetera, to make it a safer island. Thank you for the question, we appreciate it. Turns and lights, et cetera, to make it a safer island. Thank you for the question.
We have one more question.
Turns and lights, et
May you
cetera.
come to the podium,
make it a
please?
safer island.
Podium,
Please, Ashley.
Sorry. And state your name for the record.
Hi, Ashley Phillips. Noticed everywhere, a lot of places on the island that I've never seen homeless people before, and now I've personally had them approach me twice, probably in the last 2 months, which I've never had that before. Do you guys get calls for that? If you do, what do you do? Is it increased? Because I think it has.
We get calls for that typically when they're harassing somebody. If you would consider yourself being harassed, and call us. If they're not doing anything illegal, there's not much we can do with them. If they're violating a town ordinance or violating a state statute, then we can take action. And more often than not, they're not doing anything illegal. If they're panhandling and they're not allowed to be in that area, we educate them and move them on. If not, we'll take action.
I think some of those experiences are also adding to the sense of things, a little bit of anxiety on the island, just that, as well as a number of incidents that people worry about. So it's a great question. Thank you both for asking questions, and we appreciate your time in giving us the information we needed.
Thank you.
All right. And under unfinished business, we also have a consideration of a resolution expressing support for the Rotary Community Center proposal, and Mr. Gruber is going to come up and chat with us about it.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
before we move to that, I'm just, cobwebs up here going
That's okay.
after the question about homelessness. I know that we have had a presentation in years past from Beaufort County around the potential of a homeless shelter and a department of the county being stood up to deal with homelessness. Now, that's probably been 3-4 years ago now, I think. I'm just bringing it to our attention that maybe it's something that we can revisit so we can get an update down the road as to where that's going. Obviously, it is affecting our island, and if there are potential solutions in the works, I think we should be privy to them, and the citizens should be as well. Sorry.
No, that was a great thought. Thank you for asking.
In response to that, we'll work with Chairwoman to look at a future agenda, and we'll contact Beaufort County. I understand that Ben Boswell, who was previously the number 2 over there, was just recently promoted and is now running that department, and it probably would make sense to contact him to see if they could come down and do a presentation on kind of their most recent efforts.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. For today, we are continuing a conversation that we had a couple months ago, but really the start of this discussion started almost a year ago. Back in June of 2023, the town received correspondence from representatives of the Rotary Club here on the island, and essentially inquiring as to the town's openness, willingness, however you want to characterize it, but essentially getting a gauge for the town's support for a proposal wherein the Rotary Club would look to fundraise using all of the local Rotary Club chapters, with the goal of generating approximately $750,000 in private fundraising that would be used towards supporting the development of a community center. And in the correspondence, it was referenced that the plan would be to similarly model it after what was done by the Rotary Clubs in Bluffton to create a community center that is now used in one of the public parks there in the town of Bluffton. At our last meeting, this item was discussed. A number of questions were raised about the location for the proposed community center and the scope of uses for the proposed community center. And so we wanted to continue that discussion, and to help facilitate it, we've invited Mr. Siebold, who's the representative with the Rotary Club, who reached out to the town initially to be here to kind of help facilitate that discussion. So with the chair's permission, my recommendation would be to invite Mr. Siebold to come up, let him speak to the request, a copy of which was included in the materials outlining their most recent proposal from April of this year. And then we'll kind of go from there in terms of facilitating our discussion, with an understanding that I think what we're trying to work towards is generally identifying a high level of support for the concept that will then give staff direction to go work on developing much more detailed information about location, budget, scope of services, and things like that. But at least having some initial idea of the level of support will allow us to direct our efforts in terms of kind of gathering some of that more detailed information.
Thank you. It's a great idea. Welcome.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Bruce Siebold. I'm representing the 3 Rotary Clubs of Hilton Head Island, and I appreciate this committee's willingness to continue to have a conversation about a proposal that we have. Josh is correct. Our first correspondence with the town was in June of 2023, outlining this idea, but it goes back actually further than that. When referencing the relationship that the Bluffton Rotary Club and the town of Bluffton had in operating a community center for that community, we've long thought that this would be a great idea for Hilton Head too, and have been looking for an opportunity to act on that for many years. Going back to the 21-22 period when we were coming out of COVID, we actually started looking at repurposing some existing vacant facilities, such as the Carrabba's restaurant, which was vacant at the time, the Outback was vacant at the time. We thought, well, maybe we could repurpose one of those and make it back to a full use. And right about that time, MKSK was making a recommendation about the development of the Mid-Island track, which included, interestingly, a place for a community use facility. So that caused me to initiate a meeting with Mr. Orlando to find out what is the process of making a proposal as far as Rotary entering into a partnership or a collaboration with the town. He advised us to, without any parameters or guidelines, to simply, why don't you tell us what you have in mind and let us react to that and begin the conversation at that point. So that's what we did, and you saw that and asked a bunch of meaningful questions at your meeting late last fall, I think. We've tried to clarify some of those things by providing you with the materials that are in your packet today in terms of a little more clarification about what Rotary would like to see. And I'm just basically here now to see what questions you still have and how we might be able to continue that.
Thank you. Well, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Steve, would you like to start?
No.
No? Okay. All right. We'll come back to you then. Alex.
Sure. Actually, I'm very impressed with the idea of the Rotary Clubs being involved with the community project, and I support the idea, conceptually, and I for one am in favor of us continuing the conversation. I will just highlight a couple of things that I think we need to be thinking about down at the detail level. I don't want to necessarily use the Bluffton Center as the example, because Bluffton's got their own, what they call it, state of mind over in Bluffton. Obviously, Hilton Head is distinctly different. One of the things that we need to be sure of is that as we go down this road, it is not perceived as a private endeavor. It is a public facility. It will be open to the public with not any type of requirements that Rotary groups, for example, have preferential treatment along the way. So I think that's something we need to really be aware of as we're moving this forward. Outside of that, I think it's a great idea. I think we're going in the right direction. Obviously, there are other details that are going to come up along the way. Unfortunately, whatever we talk about today, by the time we are actually putting shovels in the ground for Mid-Island, may or may not be relevant at that point. So we have to have the ability to sort of shift gears along the way. But for the most part, I'm in support of the idea.
Great, thank you. Let me emphasize, it's Rotary's sincere intent that this be a community center. I couldn't agree with you more, Councilman Brown, that particularly for the 30% of the population that does not live in the planned unit developments, there's really not a gathering space that's affordable and usable and friendly and inviting for those folks to use. And we really think that this could be a huge benefit to the community. So thank you for offering your global support on that.
Patsy.
I agree with Mr. Brown, generally supportive of the concept, and I do have a question for Mr. Gruber in just a minute. I'm from a community, well, I lived there 31 years, where there are community centers all around the community, and it's not an outdoor park with a pavilion. It is a building where the community could use it, so that can be very helpful. I'd like to know a little bit more, and that's what I want to ask Mr. Gruber about. I pulled up the master plan for the Mid-Island track, and it seems as though this is the only location that's being proposed. And I apologize, there's so many different photos here, but there appears to be community facility, and it looks like multi-use community facility. There's 2 buildings by this oval, and then there's also a community space, which appears to be some sort of covered building over by the location, the relocation site for St. James Baptist Church. So I'm trying to figure out which location we'd be talking about, because right now, the town council is only moving forward with phase 1, which is basically addressing the storm drainage on the site, and also some restrooms and some parking facilities, and maybe some more cleaning up. So we're not yet to the building stage, but first of all, I want to know which location are we talking about, and what, if any, impact is there on the proposed relocation site for St. James Baptist Church. Mr. Seabold, you're welcome to stand there, but if you want to sit, it's okay.
So I think right now, conceptually, we're looking at the site as a whole. And I think Mr. Seabold explained that part of the genesis of this request was based upon the fact that a community center of some sort was identified, as you indicated, as part of a future phase for this particular area. And so, absent that identification, my understanding is I think the Rotary groups are very open to looking at potentially other locations. It's just that, but for the fact that this one specifically identified a community center, that then lined up with what they were kind of looking for in terms of this opportunity. So if the committee ultimately moves this forward to council, and if council, again, from a conceptual standpoint, says, yes, we support this idea, then ultimately the next step in this process would be to answer those questions that you've raised with the specificity that they're going to need. The where would this be located? What's the size of it? What's the orientation and all of those things? My somewhat reluctance is if we don't know the council's supportive of that location, then we don't want to invest a lot of time and effort into answering those questions without knowing that there's at least that general level of support for it. So if there is, that is an analysis that will have to be done, and those plans would have to be brought back to council for formal approval. But we've not really undertaken to lay that out and put out an actual site plan. We have just very, very general information at this point because that's the level of conversation that we're still at.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Can you tell me what's the difference between those 2 communities, spaces, which appear to be covered on the master plan? There's one of them, as I said, over near the site for the proposed relocation of St. James. The other one is closer to the oval. I see Mr. Cullen.
I was going to say, I may ask for a pinch hitter here just because Sean, I think, was a little bit more intimately involved in working with MKSK on those designs, and so he may be able to speak to that with a little bit more specificity.
Yeah, just wondering kind of what was the idea behind those 2 different spaces.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Sean Colin. And so I know when there was discussion about the St. James Church and the ability to provide some additional community synergy, I guess, on this area, that's when the thought of a potential community center was kind of linked to a shared facility in that regard. And the other space that you asked about, I'm sorry, Ms. Bryson.
Over close to the oval is the proposed oval is closer to Dillon Road and between Dillon Road and the
yes.
oval.
Yeah, and so in the master plan, that was programmed for a little bit more active space with some open play and playground. I think that was more formalized for, let's say, recreation, passive recreation on that side than the St. James Church side was more of a community-based with some community gardens, the church obviously, and then that shared space for the Rotary.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking about is I'm looking at that page in the master plan right now that shows multi-use community facility. There are 2 clearly covered buildings. It's not an open pavilion. It's a covered building with walls around it. And so I was just trying to figure out, what was the idea, and which idea are we looking at right now? I don't understand them, so that's why I'm asking.
Well, as I understand it, this isn't site-specific. This is to approve a concept to include this type of facility and this partnership within the Mid-Island Tract as it gets programmed out. As you mentioned, Phase 1 is the only thing we're actively pursuing at this point, which is really stormwater preservation and restoration of the site, some removal of some invasive species and that sort of, and some walking trails and some restrooms. So I think this is a conceptual approval to a partnership with a group on a community center to advance that. Depending on how the other physical elements are approved by town council will guide where and when this come to be.
There's a great, there should be several great meeting videos from when we went through those discussions and those plans were being presented. I would encourage you to go, you'd have a broader view of what we spoke about in terms of what would be where and how that would all play out. That one that you're referring to over by Dillon Road, the one on the left, so I always get the roads mixed up, by the playground. I think that was, that had a totally different sense to it than the pavilion, the building over by where St. James Church is planned to be relocated. And in terms of putting things into categories, a community center, I think in the way that the Rotary Club has presented their vision, that would fit that category area if I was putting things into buckets, of it being placed by where the St. James Church would go, and perhaps some community gardens and things that we spoke about while coming to the master plan that we approved a few years ago. But I would encourage you to go back and watch those videos, and you'll get a bigger sense of the conversation and the presentation at that point. But Sean's right. I think at this point, we're not necessarily speaking to the exact selection of the space, but the general concept of having one and whether or not you would support that. And now, if that, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I actually sat through that whole meeting.
Oh, you did? Okay,
But
perfect.
as Sheldon on Big Bang would say, I don't have an eidentic memory.
So, all right, well, luckily it was preserved in a video, so, Steve.
First of all, I think it's extremely generous that the Rotary clubs have offered to do this. And I think, I don't have any question at all that we should move forward with it as a concept in general consideration. Would it be fair to assume that this might become a Phase 1A to be taken up before Phase 2 in terms of progress?
Yeah, so the resolution that's attached was drafted with the idea that it is being approved at a very high level, concept-wise. This says, yes, there is support. It does a couple of things. One, it allows staff to really then kind of focus in on, okay, now we know where this is going to be at. Let's answer those questions about where's the best location, where's the orientation, how does it fit in with everything else that's planned for that particular area, assuming that that is the will of council to say that from a support standpoint. But it also allows the Rotary to know that, yes, there is support for this project. Let's go ahead and start doing what they need to do, because, $750,000, I have no doubt they'll be able to raise it, but that's something that is going to take a significant lift on their end in order to generate that amount of funding. But at least lets them know now, yes, let's go ahead and start putting those things in place and doing that while we start ironing out these details about what the size of the facility is, where it's going to be located, and ultimately what the use is. But again, at this point, if there are things that are just an absolute no-go, then we need to know that now, and you make that part of the resolution. Otherwise, it's just, yes, we're saying we support the concept at a high level, but we want more information before we move on from Phase 1A to Phase 2.
Yes, I'm strongly in favor of that, and if you were taking a look at the dais and myself in particular today, and you don't think I look as well, it's because I've got this green screen staring at me.
It's a great reflection, yeah.
I didn't even think of that, yes.
Madam Chair, you mentioned that the resolution made me pull it up again. So, and this is one of the reasons I was asking about the the program elements, if you will, those two areas, because the language of the resolve part of the resolution says authorized to enter in discussions to establish a formal partnership proposal for further consideration, which is all great, regarding the creation and furnishing of a multi-use community center, and then it says to be located on the Mid-Island track, and then the last part of it says pursuant to the adopted program elements of the adopted master plan, and that's why I was trying to figure out, and I was hoping that someone here who knew more than I did about the master plan could tell me which adopted program element are we talking about? It's not obvious.
And again, I would encourage you to go back to those discussions, because as I recall, and Alex, I think you were in those meetings too. Stevie may have been paying attention to what was happening at the time. I know you were very engaged. The bucket, again, going back to those categories, I'm kind of I put things in places. Would be that the community center was thought to, at that time, be best positioned near St. James Church, the community garden idea that was presented. And so the other one, as I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I recall, there was more discussion of it, maybe even housing a restaurant or something like that would be a little bit more public-oriented, rather than this space, which was more community-oriented. So those were I'm not sure if I'm helping you at all, but as I recall it, and those are two different spaces. So I believe, and I will support, turning to my comments now, thank you, first of all, to the Rotary Clubs for stepping up and offering to raise money and to be committed to this endeavor. I think that if we have a community center built on this island, indeed, the space we were just referring to next to in about the same area of the St. James Church is the appropriate place to put it. It makes complete sense to me for that location. And the monies spent are appreciated. Some caveats that I have, you were asking things that are important to me. It's important to me that we know the budget and where it's coming from, see if, and where it would fit into a CIP list. It's also important to me that the town will own it, right? And by virtue of that, it's open to all of the nonprofits and people who would want to come in to use it. And the monies being raised could help to outfit it, et cetera, wherever those monies would be spent. And we would certainly acknowledge the generosity of the Rotary Club for doing the hard work. And so with that in mind, I'm very much in support of that location and with the town's ownership, and that it would remain something that is, as I described, and not open for rent for weddings and, bar mitzvahs and et cetera. So as long as we're keeping that aside, perhaps in that other place or in some other world, or the Marriott or the Westin, I'm a big thumbs up and appreciate the efforts. Yes.
I realize I should probably just leave well enough alone, but I have a couple things to say. First of all, with regard to St. James Baptist Church, we have met with Herb Ford to talk about whether there was any synergy for getting together with the two buildings. He applauds our efforts. He thinks the community center is a great concept, but since their current design is to have the building of the sanctuary and the fellowship hall or community area contiguous with one another, possibly even sharing a roof, he saw few opportunities for that kind of collaboration, so there likely are going to be two different things. Separately, and secondly, thank you for emphasizing the community-based initiative that's going on here. Frankly, if the town can't see to commit to the intent that it be made open to the wide public at a negligible cost, we don't have a case to raise money. We can't fund another Marriott who's charging $1 million a foot for, so that's what we'd be asking of the town, that you are with us on the commitment that this be a community center available to the community. That gives us the opportunity to raise that money because it's a badly needed space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Alex.
Yeah, just sort of listen to the conversation here. Mr. Grube, I think that if if this committee is so inclined to move this forward, that we do have a refresher of what was adopted as far as the master plan is concerned and the phasing. Since we do have some council crossovers from when that was adopted, I think that's important for us
Yes,
to
sir.
have. And I'm not going to even attempt to try to remember what we adopted in the phases that we adopted.
The
So
more we talk about it, the more I'm getting a recollection, but ultimately, we would include that as part of the presentation materials for town council to take up this consideration, and we'll cover it specifically. But if I recall correctly, I think we were leaving flexibility for the fellowship hall, but understanding that there might not be enough funding for that to be associated with the relocation effort, so then the town might step in to create something.
Sure.
I think is kind of why we laid it out the way that we did. But it also doesn't mean that they're mutually exclusive of each other either. But we will provide that information to town council as part of our review of this request.
Right. And the one other point that Mr. Alford made that I think is important, while we have phase one and phase two, and we've broken it down in that way, there's nothing to prevent us from saying this can rise to a different level of priority and be built when the time is right and the monies are there, et cetera. And we've hashed out all the details. If it's a good idea today, it's going to be a great idea in 2 years, but I'd hate to see it take 5 years. All right, so we do have a resolution in front of us.
Move to adoption of the resolution.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, and Alex seconded, and all in favor? Yes?
Comment.
Oh, public comment. You know, I'm just going to run over that every time today. Thank you for reminding
You
me.
got grandkids.
And to that point, this very proud grandmother had her 8th grandchild this morning at 7:14. So we're super excited, and we have our other 2 with us, so excuse me and thank you. It's a great day for a birthday. Is there any other public comment, though? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? 4 to 0. Okay, thank you very much. And at this time, do we have a need to go into executive session? I think we do. We have discussion of appointments to boards, commissions, and committees pursuant to South Carolina Freedom of Information Act, Section 30-4-7D, A1, and it's related to Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee, Board of Zoning Appeals, Design Review Board, Gullah Geechee Historic Neighborhood, and Community Development. Second, anyone? Are there 2 more in the back? All right, and we're going to add into that Parks and Recreation Commission and the Planning Commission.
So moved with those 2 added on the back.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Is there a motion? Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
Second.
Having taken no action, all in favor of adjourning this session of the Community Service and Public Safety meeting? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good job.